Hello and welcome to the Political Opinions podcast, where every opinion is given equal footing and political tolerance and debate are given their proper attention in a world where both are on the decline. Today's episode will cover the different preliminary opinions regarding the results of the as yet unfinished US presidential election. As of the time of recording, Joe Biden is currently ahead with 264 electoral votes compared to Donald Trump's 214, and is on track to win a further 42 electoral seats, putting him well above the 270 required to win the presidential election. Currently, both sides are claiming victory, with Biden saying he is on track to win as the votes are currently being recorded, and Donald Trump saying he's in fact been cheated out of the election, and once the illegal votes have been removed, he will in fact win. It is clear to all sides that this is far from over and will likely carry on until the inauguration of whichever side wins in January and probably even further. This has been arguably the most divisive and controversial election in recent US history, and as such there are many different sides to this debate. However, this episode will focus purely on the results of the election regarding how both sides have viewed its integrity. The aim of this episode is not to try and argue whether or not this election is controversial or fair or whatever else it may be, but rather is purely to display the opinions of the two sides and to provide a comparison between them. I will begin with the arguments put forward by Trump that this election is fraudulent, followed by the arguments put forward by Biden claiming that it isn't. Trump has continually cast doubt on the validity of the electoral ballot sent via post over the course of this year, and this has continued with his recent claims that many of these ballots have been fraudulent. He has claimed that people who aren't citizens have voted and that dead people have also been seen on ballot papers, and he's claiming therefore that Biden overtaking him through postal votes following the initial in-person vote is fraudulent and unfair, as many of the votes that went towards Biden taking the lead in core states such as Pennsylvania and Georgia he's claiming are not proper votes. Trump has also called for election officials to stop counting ballots and claimed that only those actually cast on polling day should be counted. He hasn't provided much backing to this in regards to as to why they shouldn't be counted, other than the fact that he is saying they aren't fair and only votes cast on polling day should indeed count. He has also claimed that his side has been unfairly treated in the election. For example, he has made the claim that his electoral observers have not been allowed to overview vote counting, and as such is claiming that many of the states have rigged the election against him and his campaign. Another idea put forward is questioning the legitimacy of the election, given the fact that Trump's lead in many states has been lost over the course of the last few days. Essentially, there is an idea that Trump started in the lead once polling had finished, and in fact was in the lead, and the fact he has been overtaken by fraudulent postal votes means that the election is unfair, and he's now looking to try and prevent those votes from being counted, and is in fact claiming that once you only look at the legitimate votes, he is in fact winning a lot of these states. Trump has also launched many lawsuits in various different states trying to argue that he has been unfairly treated, and has said that he is going to try and use the courts to win this election because the electoral system has failed him. Trump has also claimed that he is going to take this matter to the Supreme Court, and it essentially has said that once the Supreme Court proves that this election has been fraudulent, it will show that he has won and that all these unfair and fraudulent ballots will be discounted. Trump has also claimed that many different elections have been falsified. For example, there have been claims that election officials were giving out Sharpies to mark ballots, and some claiming that, as such, these ballots didn't count and that people have been denied the right to vote. And essentially the electoral regulators have been providing unfair ballots which have harmed Trump and cast further doubt on the legitimacy of the election. Finally, Trump has claimed that he is going to call for a recount in many states, which he claims will then expose the truth once these fraudulent ballots are not counted because it is done properly, as he is claiming, and will show that he has in fact won this election. Moving on now to the arguments that the election is legitimate. On the other side, essentially, it's just casting doubt on Trump's claims and trying to disprove them. Firstly, regarding postal ballots, they can simply point to the fact that there isn't enough factual evidence to prove Trump's claim that most postal ballots are fraudulent and that Trump is in fact lying and has made the entire situation up in order to benefit him is one of the stances that Biden and the Democrats have taken. the vast majority of postal ballots were cast in favour of the Democrats on the basis that many Republican voters doubt postal ballots' integrity given what Trump has said, and as such, they argue that Trump trying to stop postal ballots is merely just him trying to stop Democrat voters. They also question why votes that come in late should not be counted, and essentially they're using this again to try and argue that Trump is trying to prevent legitimate votes from being cast on the basis that he knows most of these votes coming in later won't be for him. So he is trying to prevent Biden gaining an even further lead, and Trump is simply trying to rig the election, in some people's view, in favour of him when he knows that he has already lost it. Some have also questioned many of the claims people have made about the actions of electoral officials. For example, the whole idea, the conspiracy or the situation regarding Sharpies has been disproven on the basis that it simply isn't true. Firstly, electoral officials are required by law to provide markers that can actually work, and even then, if Sharpies were used and machines that scan these votes couldn't detect them, they would be reviewed manually, and therefore either way, these votes would still have counted. Joe Biden has been especially critical of Trump regarding the way he is, in his view, promoting false news to try and question the result of this election. Essentially, he has claimed that Trump's misinformation campaign has been successful, and other Republicans have also been successful, and they have created a situation which has enabled them to cast doubt on the election as essentially a fallback if they had lost. And essentially, this is going to pose to some problems in the future, because other countries may use this to question the legitimacy of Biden if he does indeed take office, and his administration may not be seen as legitimate, which could harm US integrity in diplomacy in the future. The Democrats and Joe Biden have also been critical of what they call Republican efforts to deny people's basic right to vote through lawsuits, though other means have also been used continually over the past few months. They are claiming that these lawsuits are nothing but a last-ditch attempt to try and save the election for Donald Trump. As for the information that they have spread to try and damage the reputation of this election and prevent the outcome, they have also been criticised, essentially claiming that all of this information is false. Regarding the recount, Biden has claimed that this won't do anything, as it's just a way to Trump to try to cast further doubt on the election, and that a recount, given that most of these votes, the vast majority of these votes are not fraudulent, won't produce any actual difference. Finally, all of this had led many Democrats to claim that all of these actions are harming the integrity of future US elections, and that unless it is prevented from occurring, the future of elections may not be so secure. They're essentially arguing that Trump has opened a Pandora's box of what can be done during elections, and has further exposed the idea that we live in a time of democratic crisis if the most crucial election in the US political calendar is no longer seen as legitimate, and misinformation can be spread so successfully. Moving on now to a comparison on the idea of postal ballots. This is similar to an episode I made earlier in the week. Essentially, Trump is claiming that postal ballots are unfair, they are fraudulent, people vote when they shouldn't be allowed to, it can be manipulated, and there are many problems with this. And as such, he is saying that all of these votes that have come in later after the initial polling day results are unfair and fraudulent, and that he is in fact won, and these postal ballots are preventing him from winning and it's rigged against him, while Biden is claiming that there is no substantial evidence to prove essentially that postal ballots are fraudulent, and Trump has created this situation himself as a means to essentially cast doubt on the fact that he has potentially lost this election. On the issue of the way the election has been run, Trump is claiming that it has been run against him, as he's claimed that observers haven't been allowed to do their jobs properly, again the Sharpies, and Trump's son has in fact shared a video claiming that Trump ballots were burnt. Meanwhile, on the other side, these have all been questioned as fake news or misinformation. Essentially, the idea of the observers, electoral officials have claimed that the observers have been allowed to be present and that Trump is lying. On the idea of Sharpies, again, that was proven to be false, and the video that I've just mentioned was also proven to be false. Trump has also claimed that votes cast after the election shouldn't be counted, and all of these votes coming in are just wrong for whatever reason, and they should have essentially stopped at the point when he was winning. Meanwhile, Biden would claim that Trump is trying to stop votes that aren't in support of him from being counted, and that the Republicans are supporting a situation which they created by questioning the integrity of all of these aspects for over a year. And in fact, these votes should count, and even if they're delayed, it doesn't matter. Trump has claimed also that he is going to go to the Supreme Court to win this election and expose the truth. Meanwhile, the Democrats are claiming that these court cases will do nothing, and in fact, many of these court cases have already been thrown out, given that they don't have any substantial evidence. And then on the case of the Supreme Court, Trump believes that it will expose the truth and prove that he is in fact going to win, while Biden has claimed that it is either a ploy, essentially to try and use a conservative-dominated court of which he has appointed 3 different justices to try and support him, that is all an attempt to try and prevent democracy from operating. On the idea of a recount, Trump claimed that a recount will expose the flaws in this election and will allow him to win by removing all of the illegal ballots, while Biden is claiming that a recount won't do anything and is just another way to try and cast doubt on an election that he claims Trump has already lost. Finally, on the idea of claiming victory, both sides have said they have won. Trump is claiming he will win once it's proven which votes are fraudulent, and Biden is claiming that all the votes are accurate and that he has already won. The overall view on this election depends on which side you stand. Trump and his supporters claim that the election has been rigged against him and that it is unfair, and that if only legal votes are counted, or whatever he claimed legal votes are, then he will in fact win. And he intends to take this to the Supreme Court, while Joe Biden, who is on track to win if he can hold out in Georgia, Nevada, Arizona and Pennsylvania, says he has already won and is going to win by a considerable margin. Furthermore, Biden and his supporters claim that Trump is simply making things up to try and harm the legitimacy of an election that he lost, and is doing anything he can to try to hold on to power, and essentially arguing that these actions are as undemocratic as it can be, with essentially Biden claiming that Trump is making similar arguments that dictators have made in other countries in the past regarding elections. There is also the current situation regarding the Senate and senatorial elections. Although the results of these aren't yet as clear, I may make another video on that next week, depending on what happens and how that might affect the future. But at the moment, this episode has just been focused on the presidential election. Speaking of which, what are your thoughts on the presidential election? Do you think this election is fair or unfair? Do you think Trump is acting in his rights, or he's just doing whatever he can to hold on to power? Let me know what you think. And also, is there anything that I got wrong, missed, or could do better? Just general improvement tips. Let me know on Twitter or in the comments. And be sure to check back on Monday for the different views on different electoral systems. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you all soon.